I feel like the way we attach ourselves to the old version of ourselves is the main reason why we can't emerge as a new. And I feel like it's really just a realization that, there is no past to overcome that truly allows you to sort of cross that boundary. And when it comes to ourselves, I feel like we constantly live in reference to the previous version of ourselves, sometimes unconsciously, as if everything in our past is the basis for our future. And in a way, it is because we think it is. And I think it's important to sort of break that barrier within yourself and understand that who you are is not necessarily defined by all that has come before you, but all that happens right now. It's important to sort of give yourself the validation and the security that you need in order to traverse the world as yourself. I feel like we don't often address how much self-love you need in order to do that. But I've said it before in videos that self-love has no condition. And I feel like it's important to sort of realize that and truly internalize it. There are no hoops to jump through and there is no future self to achieve. Everything you want to get and everything you want to achieve is right here and now. Whether or not you truly attain the physical object or reap what you sow in regards to that is neither here nor there. But every action that you need to take in order to achieve anything has to happen in the present moment. And that's why I feel like the importance is always in the present moment. You can never do anything void of the present moment. And I feel like referencing the past and referencing the future only leads to your undoing. You're investing your energy in places that have yet to exist or have already happened. And when it comes to confronting our problems, I think it's important to sort of realize that there is no problem. If you can, then do, and if you can't, then it's important to let go. Our constant worry about things that aren't necessarily inherent to us is what makes things inherent to us. It's the way we attribute so much of our value into our problems and our situations without realizing that who we are is not defined by that, but defined by who we are right now. Defined by who we are, void of our issue, void of this, that, and the other. And I think it's somewhat our ego's identification with issue that wants us to be sort of confined in a box or sort of be within definition. And I think that definition is often characteristic of the past. And if we're wanting to escape from the past, why should we use that as a building block to, who we are currently? And I'm not saying forget who you are in a total sense, but to say that everything you need is always right here and you already are somebody. And we need to just realize that, it's not about leaving the past behind, but making it new. And there's no limit to how new you can make it. And I feel like that restriction of time, that barrier that we place between us and our relative gauge of how long something should take in regards to our growth is what makes it take so long. It's about giving yourself what you want and need right now and taking the steps and not even referencing time when you're talking about your own growth. Your affirmation of yourself doesn't, happen overnight. But I feel like you shouldn't even be worried about the whole concept of time when it comes to who you are in your development. You'll be exactly where you need to be, and you are exactly who you need to be right now. If you're the path, you have to realize there is no wrong way to go. You're always going to be the right way. And it's not the path that needs affirmation. It's always been the self. I feel like truly instantiating who you are within the present moment and understanding and grasping that is all we truly need to do in order to, gain anything that we want. Because to gain anything that we want, we have to be present enough to make the choice to make those steps towards what we want. And it's always the first step that reveals the second. And you have to be present to make that first step. And I feel like a lot of us try to think through everything. And one thing I'm realizing most of all is our mind is a tool. It's a helper, but I think it shouldn't necessarily be used to gauge our entire life. I feel like the more we try to base everything off of our mind, the more it's going to be clouded by our bias, and the more our perception of the world and our overall happiness is going to be defined by how we feel about certain situations, certain things, and certain this and that, when it's really defined by how you feel about yourself. Because how we feel about those situations, how we feel about our issues is only a reaction to how the issue is. Whatever we encounter in those issues are always separate from us. And I think it's our attachment to the outcome and our feeling like we have to be in control of everything that strips us away from our self-control. I feel like we don't know how we feel, or we can't control how we feel. We can't do this about ourselves because we're investing so much of our energy, our attention, and our definition of how we should feel outside of who we actually are. In saying there's no past to overcome, I'm really just saying that, you know, when you can look at yourself in the present moment, there's no point in saying, how was I before? Or what do I need to overcome here, here, and there? If you're able to be present enough with yourself, I feel like you see the parts of yourself that seek out change. And that's why I feel like it's important to learn how to sort of sit still with your idea. Because your idea of yourself is truly what I feel like holds us back sometimes. Because you really can only do as much as you think you can. So it's important to sort of broaden that definition from yourself in regards to that expression, in regards to your cultivation of self. So no matter what happens, you can sort of be beyond what you were before. And I feel like it's not even about being beyond what you were before, but being as much as you can now. Doing what you can with what you have where you are. And that's all it takes. I feel like it shouldn't even be referenced in the past or the future, but truly just embodied in the present. Doing what you can with what you have is really just doing your best. Recognizing what you can do in this moment. Either doing it or not doing it, and accepting it or letting it go. That's all that is. And once we do that, I feel like the freedom that ensues with ourselves and truly, I guess, freeing ourselves from that allows you to achieve certain things. Because once you're not defined by the past or the future, once you're not defined by even how you feel about this situation, that situation, but mostly how you feel about yourself, and you vest that self-love within yourself, and you vest that care and attention, attention, and intention into yourself, then life becomes more intimate than it is personal. And I feel like when it's lived on an intimate way and your affection is sort of characteristic of the world around you, then it has no choice but to be expressed in that world around you. And in that expression, I feel like we find somewhat, not even a reason to keep going, but the joy of the present moment. I feel like so much exists within the present moment, and joy, love, and peace all exist in it. Like, I feel like since I've attempted to be present, since I've tried to be present with myself, a lot of the problems that I've faced in the past have sort of become null. And I'm not saying that they are significant, but I recognize there's no point in attributing negativity to situations that I have some influence over. And if I don't have any influence, I don't have any control, then there's no point in feeling negative about something that's out of my control. You know, and I don't mean that with everything. Of course, there's basis for feelings. Of course, there's reasons to feel a certain way. But when it comes to our own growth and our own understanding of the world and things that actually hold us back, especially those mundane things, especially how we treat ourselves on a day-to-day and how we don't allow ourselves to sort of be expressed the way we need to be, I feel like that is what needs to be let go. I think we need to understand that we have to give ourselves freedom to express ourselves in order to be able to see ourselves. And if you can't see yourself, then how can you see the parts of yourself that seek out change? And how can you see what you need to do in order to, I guess, achieve what you want to achieve? I feel like all of our achievement is always marked by our ability to see ourselves achieving. Giving ourselves that liberty, that freedom, giving ourselves the confidence to keep moving forward. The confidence to believe that you can actually achieve something. And I feel like if we can even gather it in thought, then it's important to validate it in reality. You know, to know it's humanly possible means you too can do it. And I feel like I've been living by that for a couple years now. And to say that anything is possible is to say that anything is possible. It's just about the volition, the care, and the integrity and the space that you allow to be within you to accommodate that something. Like, if you don't think you can achieve something, you're not going to try to achieve it. What's the point in trying if you already know you can't? And I feel like a lot of us try to answer that question with our goals and aspirations before we even try. Before we even give it our full effort. And that's what I feel like the present moment is, and doing what you can, what you have is. Truly giving yourself to the moment, truly giving yourself to whatever it is that you're doing. So there's nothing left to give. And when I say there's nothing left to give, I mean that you don't have to worry about it. Because everything you've done, or you tried your best, or you gave what you could. So whatever the outcome is not necessarily representative of you, but representative of it. And if you two don't correlate, then it's out of your hands. Because you tried your best. And I think trying your best is really all you need to do in order to find some type of security and validity within yourself. Once you realize that the present moment and your own happiness shouldn't be dictated by everything around you, then it's just about you doing things, you achieving things, you trying to do things, and you lose nothing in trying, but gain everything in success. And some people say, oh, what about the time I lost? What about this, that, and the other? And I feel like when you're constantly referencing time in regards to your success, then you've already lost. Who we are is not dictated by how quickly we achieve something, but what we achieve and who we are, basically, and who's the person achieving it. And I feel like that's the most important part in recognizing that you need to validate the person before you validate their accolades. You need to validate the vehicle before you validate the road. You have to validate the legs before you take the step. And once you do that, I feel like it's really just about continuing to make those steps and consciously choosing to make the steps that lead towards your goal. I feel like the progressive realization of a worthy ideal isn't necessarily about having a grand ideal or having this, that, and the other, but holding it firmly in your heart. Recognizing that the positivity and the care and the attention and the energy that you put into anything will be returned to you. And I'm not saying it's going to be returned in exactly the way you want, but in a way that is fitting. And that's why I feel like it's not necessarily important to be attached to the outcome, because you never know how something's going to be received to you or how it's going to come back. So it's important to just invest your energy and do your part and allow the universe to or the world or God or whatever you want to call it to do the rest. What the world doesn't give to you, you have to give to yourself. And if you do your part to give to yourself, then everything else is out of your hands. And I think that's what the power of the present moment truly is. And I don't say that to say that you're not supposed to care about anything, but recognize that our attachment to our problems, our attachment to our fears would perpetuate them. We want to rid ourselves of fear. We want to rid ourselves of problems, but we're the one who's connotating each and everything we encounter as a problem. Whether or not you can do something or whether or not you can't is truly the only thing that exists. If you can do, if you can't, then let go. I'm not saying you can't feel a certain way about it, but recognize that it's not a feeling about yourself that you should be, perpetuating. Like if I fail at this, it's important to not take that personally. Like, oh, I'm a failure because of this, or I'm this because of that. No, I wasn't able to do this. This is not something I could do. Or this at this specific time is not something I could do. It's important to sort of separate yourself from, I feel like, your problems and situations. Because the more you make them inherent to yourself, the more you're going to be dictated by something that's not you. And I feel like in our dictation, in our connotation, we lose so much of our freedom. It's about allowing yourself to sort of occupy space without necessarily needing to be described or connotated. Because who we are is not necessarily something that I feel like is thought. It's expressed. And you have to be the one to listen to your own expression and listen to your own feelings in order to understand them. And if we're constantly trying to think through how we feel, then how are we going to feel it? Your feelings aren't a thought thing. Your feelings are a felt thing. And if you're not being conscious to feel them, then there's no point in having them. I feel things all the time, but I recognize what those feelings are coming from. And I feel like that's the most important thing to do to overcome however you feel. If I recognize why I'm happy, then I recognize what I'm doing that made me happy. And I continue to do that to make myself more happy, to embrace that. And if I find something that makes me feel bad, then I take that step away from it. I recognize what, sort of pushes me in that direction. But I'm not saying I'm dictated by the events or circumstances, but conscious enough to realize what is making me feel a certain way and what I need to do in order to address that issue. And when it comes to our association with our negative emotions, I feel like it's just about recognizing that you don't need to live in the feeling in order to acknowledge it. I think sometimes we, attribute certain negative things to ourselves in order to sort of address them. Like we feel like we have to live within a feeling, or maybe we live within a feeling because we feel like that is representative of us. But I feel like it's important to sort of separate yourself from those sort of definitions in order to emerge as who you really are. And if you have any discomfort with, you're feeling negative or you're this, then it's important to sort of make those steps in order to recognize that separation. How much you give to yourself is how much is going to be expressed. And I feel like you can only know the world and experience the world as deeply as you know yourself. Because knowledge of the self, I feel like, is in a lot of ways knowledge of the world. And I don't mean that to say you start knowing stuff about the world, but the more I've learned about myself, the more I've accepted things about the world. The more I've learned to accept within myself, the more I can go out and accept other people. Because you realize that, your lack of acceptance of how things actually are is what contributes to your undoing. And that's what I mean by there is no past to overcome. You have to accept what's now, not reference what was, because it's never about getting back to something. It's about getting forward. You're never going to be that same person again that was in the past, or maybe you are still that person. Regardless of which, it's not about taking any steps back. It's about moving forward with the information that you have now in order to become who you need to be. All that to say, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate y'all. I hope you guys are enjoying your existence. And please take care of yourself. I feel like self-love is something that you're supposed to do for yourself. And I feel like it's not necessarily something that is inherent to a lot of us. I feel like it's something that has to be taught nowadays. And I feel like once you teach yourself to sort of love and appreciate and accept yourself for who you are, a lot of life becomes just a journey of acceptance rather than a journey of overcoming obstacles. So thank you. Keep being great.